Okay, good morning, class. Like we do every day, we're going to start today off with doing a little bit of vocabulary preview, stuff that's going to be pivotal for us to understand as we go through today's lecture. Our first word of the day is the 38th parallel. Okay, this is a line that crosses through Korea at the 38th parallel and serves as the dividing line between the two countries. Okay, so this is what split North and South Korea. So right now, turn to your partner next to you. If you don't have a partner, you guys can work in a group of three. Explain what you guys know, or if we've talked anything in the past about the 38th parallel. I'll be walking around listening to conversations to see if we can move to our next word.
I know the 38th parallel, like a line that cuts 3.5.
You know what it is? What is it?
It's like a border.
It's a border? So it's split what two countries?
North and South Korea.
Okay, class. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like we have a good grasp of what the 38th parallel is. Okay, I've heard a lot of different things, such as it was a border, it was a divider, okay, it split North and South Korea. Very good job. Okay, let's move on. Our next word, it is a person. It's somebody we've talked about before in the past, Douglas MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur was the leader of the military operations in Korea until his firing by President Harry Truman. So right now, turn to your partner. Let's talk about Douglas MacArthur, what you remember about him from World War II, and what you may know about him in Korea. Okay, I'll be walking around listening.
And then, what else? He rebelled to Japan.
He'll rebuild. He helped.
Yes, so I'm going to do that right now. Hey, Mike. Okay, get you a packet. Okay, Micah. So right now, so we're going through the documents right now, filling in the blanks like every day. So right now we're on Douglas MacArthur. You're supposed to be working with a partner, discussing in between each word what you know about this person, what we've already learned about him, or use the words. Okay. So fill in the blanks we've already gone through, and we'll go back and talk about it again. Okay. Class, it seems like we have a pretty good understanding of who Douglas MacArthur is. Before we move on, let me make sure. Okay, what was Douglas MacArthur in charge of during World War II? Yes.
Rebuilding of Japan.
Rebuilding of Japan. Very good. Okay, we'll discuss more about what he does in Korea. Let's move to our third word. Ceasefire. Okay, ceasefire is a temporary, keyword temporary, suspension of fighting. Okay, this is a temporary. So we'll talk about why the word temporary and ceasefire is important as we go through the lesson and talk about the tensions that are still present in North and South Korea today. So right now, turn to your partner, use it in a sentence, talk about what you know or what you know about ceasefire personally. Okay? Begin. You have a partner? Work in a group of three. Or you can turn right here, work with Rachel, she has a partner. Right. Do you have any questions? Do you understand what ceasefire means? And what does ceasefire mean?
It's when there's a stop of fighting.
A stop of fighting?
No, it's not permanent though. It
Okay,
just
how
stops.
it just stops. So how would you use that? Like, you're an athlete in sports. What would a ceasefire be?
Really?
It's like when you're having batting practice and the coach yells ceasefire, do people stop throwing the pitches?
Yes.
Yeah, you temporarily stop throwing the pitches before you start again. Okay. Class, it sounds like we have a good understanding of ceasefire. Let's move to our fourth and final word of the lesson. Okay? We're going to talk about the demilitarized zone. Okay, the demilitarized zone, otherwise known as the DMZ. Okay? This is an area where military installations, activities, or personnel are forbidden by treaty or agreement between states or military power. Now, let me give you a little bit more in depth because I'm sure most of us have never heard of the DMZ before. Okay, imagine we talked about the 38th parallel. The DMZ would be a little bit of an altered version of the 38th parallel where both countries would be separated between South and North Korea, and there would be no military allowed to go in between these two things. Now, I'm going to add a little extra to our definition so we have this in our mind when we get to the DMZ in today's lesson. If I'm from South Korea and I walk into the DMZ, North Korea can shoot and kill me at any point in time. If I'm, yes sir.
Did you shoot them?
No, it's my fault I'm in this area where no military is supposed to be. Now, if somebody from North Korea walks in, can I shoot them?
Yes.
Yeah, demilitarized zone. Nobody can be in there. Okay? So right now, turn to your partners, discuss it, make sure you guys are on the same page. I'll be walking around listening.
Like basically, John Paul what I heard is that from the militarized zone is like basically a border line, but they shoot you if you cross this line.
Do you have any questions, girls? No? Yes. What is the DMZ?
We said that like you can't cross like the border,
Like a
but
border?
without your passport, you don't have like
Okay, yeah, so it's a place you can't cross. Okay? So it's a little different than a border. Most countries where we could cross going to Mexico, the DMZ, there's no crossing. You go in there, you can be shot. It's a place nobody can go. Okay, so class, it sounds like we have a pretty good understanding of all of our vocabulary for the day. So right now, let's begin the lesson. We are going to transition into talking about setting the stage. Okay? Now, we get into setting the stage of the war. When World War II ended, the Japanese forces in the Korean Peninsula surrendered to Soviet and American troops. Okay, now, let's go back and review a little bit. Potsdam Conference. President Truman makes an agreement with Joseph Stalin, saying if you fight with us, the United States, we will give you land in Asia in return. August 6, 1945, we dropped the first atomic bomb. Joseph Stalin on August 7 does what? He invades Manchuria. Why does he invade Manchuria? To get land. Flash forward to September 2nd, Japan officially surrenders. We have to give some form of land to Russia. The Korean Peninsula was divided at the 38th parallel into two separate occupation zones controlled by the United States and the Soviet Union. Now, I've drawn us this beautiful map over here. Up there is North Korea. What country is above North Korea? China. Since China is above North Korea, before the Civil War starts, after we've already given North Korea to the Soviet Union, what did we think was going to happen in China?
The KMT would win.
The KMT would win. Okay? The Kuomintang was going to win. The Nationalists would win. After they won, it would become a country the United States could support and be a buffer between North Korea and the USSR. What actually happens? They lost. Mao Zedong is successful. Now we have a united communist front. Because of this, we now see North Korea has developed into a communist state after the Soviets placed former fighter Kim Il-sung into power. Now, what's happening in South Korea? We haven't talked much about South Korea. South Korea would develop into a non-communist state supported by the Western powers, particularly the United States. Now, as we talked about with the DMZ, both countries are still divided today. There is still tension in Korea today as a result of this war and what happens in the 1950s. Okay. Now, any questions before we begin our notes? Okay, number one, what happened to the Korean Peninsula after the end of World War II? Okay, the Korean Peninsula was divided at the 38th parallel in two occupation zones controlled by the United States and the USSR. Yes?
Do the Russians still have any land there? Like, do they still own any land at all?
I'm sorry?
Like,
So they never technically owned the land. It was just under, like, remember we talked about spheres of influence?
yeah.
It was more so they had influence in who was in power and who was running the country. Okay, number two. What did the two different states develop into? Okay, it's simple. North Korea developed into a communist state. South Korea developed into a non-communist state. Second part of that question is what superpowers support? The USSR supports North Korea. Western powers, particularly the United States, supports South Korea. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, let me say that again. North Korea develops into a communist state supported by the Soviet Union. South Korea develops into a non-communist state supported by the Western powers, in particular the United States. Any questions? Yes.
Was like this? Was the South Korea like a capitalist?
Yes, so they're definitely capitalists, and they go through a string of dictators after the end of the war, but in the 1980s they'll develop into a democracy focused on industrialization. Yes, sir.
Could you repeat number 1 again?
Number 1, what happened to the Korean Peninsula after the end of World War II? The Korean Peninsula was divided at the 38th parallel into 2 occupation zones controlled by the United States and the Soviet Union. Okay, any questions? Are we ready to move on? Yes, sir.
Can you repeat the first part of number 2?
What did the 2 nations develop into? North Korea developed into a communist state. South Korea, non-communist. Yes?
Who was North Korea supported by?
North Korea is supported by the Soviet Union. Okay, we ready to move on? Okay, now, we get into the beginning of the war. On June 25, 1950, North Korean troops swept across the 38th parallel in a surprise attack on South Korea. Within days, the North Koreans had swept deep into South Korea and had taken the capital of Seoul. President Truman believed the North Koreans were repeating the aggression tactics of what Japan, Hitler, and Mussolini had done in the 1930s. Okay, so we believe that this was the first step for the North Koreans and communism to spread. Just like we saw with Mussolini taking Ethiopia, just like we saw with Hitler taking many different countries, we are worried that if they took this first country, they would keep expanding. By doing this, this is the first time there's a major challenge to the containment policy of the United States in the Cold War. Okay. Now, what is the American foreign policy that says we could take military action against somebody and to contain the spread of communism?
The Truman Doctrine.
Truman Doctrine. Very good. So this is the first time the United States basically gives itself the ability to go fight communism. One of the main particular reasons is because the Soviets were supplying the North Koreans with money and weaponry, is why the North Koreans are so successful. Okay? So the South Koreans at this point in time at the beginning of the war, they have the support of the United States, but we do not have active troops fighting at this point in time. The North Koreans have money and guns from the Russians. So they're highly successful as they're supported with money and guns. So that's why they're successful at the beginning part of the war. So now we go to number 3. How did the war start out for the North Koreans? The North Koreans had swept deep into South Korea and had taken the capital of Seoul. Okay? At the beginning of the war, the North Koreans had swept deep into South Korea and had taken the capital of Seoul. That's a beautiful drawing you have going there, Rachel. Okay, now, why were they successful compared to the South Koreans? Simple. The Soviets were supplying the North Koreans with money and weaponry. Okay. The North Koreans were being supplied with money and weaponry from the Soviets. Oh no. Cracked heart emoji. That's not good. Okay, why did the United States step up and come to the defense of South Korea? Truman Doctrine. We wanted to contain the spread of communism. Okay, we wanted to contain the spread of communism. Truman Doctrine. Any questions? Yes, sir. No. Yes.
Can you say the first part for
First part, number 3. How did the war start out for the North Koreans? The North Koreans swept deep into South Korea and had taken the capital of Seoul. Okay. We ready to move on? Okay. Now, we get into where things get interesting. Things get interesting. All of a sudden, South Korea asked the United Nations for assistance, but the Soviets held veto power in the Security Council. Okay, before we get deep into this, let's review the United Nations. Okay, the United Nations. There's the General Assembly. 193 countries vote. Then we get the Security Council. It has 5 permanent members and 6 rotating members. Who are our 5 permanent members of the Security Council? Russia, China, U.S., France, Britain. There we go. There's our 5 members. So we talked on last Thursday about after the end of the Chinese Civil War, we get 2 different Chinas are formed. We get the PRC, the People's Republic of China in China itself, and we get the formation of the POC, the People's Republic of China. As we get the ROC, the Republic of China. After this happens, the United Nations forced to pick which one will actually vote in the Security Council. And the United Nations picked what?
The one Taiwan one.
Picked the one that's in Taiwan. Very good. We picked the ROC. As a result of this, the Soviets say, this is garbage. I'm out. They're boycotting the United Nations. Now, this ends up actually backfiring on the Russians because after South Korea asks for aid, it goes to a vote. After it goes to a vote, we don't have Communist Soviet Union in there to vote. We have Democratic Taiwan. And now all of a sudden, the UN passed a resolution to send military assistance to South Korea under the command of the United States. Do you guys think if the Soviet Union, who's supplying military weapons and money to North Korea, would vote for the UN to give support to South Korea? No. So they end up screwing themselves over by boycotting the UN. Eventually, a total of 15 nations will participate in the operation, but the majority of the men came from the United States under the command of Douglas MacArthur. Okay? So now, number 5, why were the Soviets unable to stop the UN from assisting South Korea? Simple. Because the Soviets were boycotting the UN over the decision to give China's seat to Taiwan. Okay? Because the Soviet Union is boycotting the UN for giving China's seat to Taiwan. Okay, any questions? Now, after this happens, how did the UN assist South Korea? The UN passed a resolution to send military assistance to South Korea. Okay? The UN passed a resolution to send military assistance to South Korea. Yep. The UN passed a resolution to send military assistance to South Korea. Now, which country would lead the resistance against the North Koreans? Somebody tell me, which countries would lead the resistance against the North Koreans? Say that again. Say that louder, Matthew. The United States. Very good. Okay, the United States would lead the resistance against the North Koreans. Okay, now we get into combat operation begins. By September 1950, the North Koreans had taken all of the land past the 38th parallel, except around the port of Busan. They now control all this land. So General MacArthur comes up with the idea of what he called a pincer maneuver. It's simple. You remember us talking about Operation Torch, how they made a Nazi sandwich?
Yes, sir.
Basically, the same thing's going to happen. His plan called for them to invade through the port of Incheon, basically forming a front, working back down towards where they have the South Koreans surrounded, while also invading from Busan. All of a sudden, we have a bunch of people trapped. After we successfully pull off this maneuver, we have about half of the North Korean troops surrounded, and they surrender. Those that don't surrender would make their way back up past the 38th parallel into North Korea. So very quickly, the United States is having success stopping the spread of communism. Make sense? Any questions? Okay, now, how does the pincer maneuver work? The pincer maneuver is when both sides of a military are attacking simultaneously. Okay? So let's go back to our notes. Number 7. How was the war going when United States troops arrived in 1950 September? By September 1950, the North Koreans controlled all of the peninsula except for the area around Busan in the far southeast. Okay. Now, what strategy did MacArthur devise? He devised the pincer maneuver. Okay? The pincer maneuver. Am I saying that proper? Okay, the pincer maneuver. Now, what is the pincer maneuver? It is when both sides of a military are attacking simultaneously. Okay, when both sides of a military are attacking simultaneously. Okay. Right here, Diego.
What was the first part?
First part of the second part. What was the strategy that MacArthur devised? The pincer maneuver. Okay, how did the North Koreans respond to the maneuver? About half of the North Korean forces surrendered, while large numbers began to retreat back towards the 38th parallel. Okay. About half of North Korean forces surrendered as a result of the pincer maneuver, while large numbers began to retreat back towards the 38th parallel. Luke, you okay? Locked in? Found some more here, you're bored, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, S'more's not there handing you food or candy or hot Cheetos or Hawaiian barbecue that he didn't go get in between third and fourth period. Okay. Yes, sir.
Please repeat that, but then how the North Koreans respond.
North Koreans responded by about half of North Korean forces surrendering, and while large numbers began to retreat back towards the 38th parallel. Okay, so now let's recap what's happened at this point of the war. September 1950, Busan has South Korea basically almost defeated. General MacArthur comes up with the idea of the pincer maneuver to save and basically create space for the South Koreans. After he does, he invades through Incheon, comes back down, creating a North Korean sandwich by invading Busan as well. At that point in time, we now have captured about half the North Korean fighting force, and the rest are retreating back to the 38th parallel. So now the Americans go on the offensive, which brings us to the Chinese response. The UN troops pursued the North Korean troops back over the 38th parallel and began to invade in their territory. Eventually, we get to the Uala River at the very top of China, at the very top of North Korea. There. Now, this is what we have to think. Think deeply. China and the Soviet Union have an agreement where if they're attacked by the United States or any other country that is a part of a Western capitalist democracy, those two are going to get together and fight against us. So now, the United States is on the border of China. China does not like the United States is facing pressure towards their border. As a result, 1950, China sends 300,000 troops into North Korea. Now, one of the things that's not mentioned here, we'll talk about a little bit later. Douglas MacArthur, who the Big Mac's named after, sits there one day and he's given an interview. In this interview, he's sitting there talking to the reporter, and they ask him, okay, what do you guys think about all these Chinese troops coming into North Korea? You know what he says? We should nuke them bastards. We need to get out our nukes and start dropping nukes. Now, if you're a Chinese leader like Mao Zedong, do you take that lightly?
No.
No. So guess what starts to happen? January 1951, the Chinese had pushed the UN forces back out of North Korea and took the capital of Seoul. So just like we had before, the United States is way up here, we're now back down past Seoul. In less than a year, the Chinese have pushed us all the way back down, taking the capital. Now, large part to them having much superior numbers. Now let me tell you a story. Story time, put your pencils down. My grandfather fought in Korea, was an aviator. He flew in a plane that had 2 people, but in this particular mission, he was fighting in a plane that had 6 people inside the crew. As they were flying back, they were shot down, landed just outside of Seoul in Chinese-occupied territory. As he's landed, they take him back. He's now inside of a prisoner of war camp controlled by the Chinese. They come in, they go inside the main barracks where the officers are of the Chinese. When talking to the Chinese, he's sitting there, and there's 5 other guys. One of the guys, he doesn't remember, or at least he didn't tell me what happened to the 6th guy. So as they're sitting there, there's a major, 2 lieutenants, he was a sergeant, and then he had a friend that he called Apollo that was also a sergeant. This first guy, the major, he's sitting there. The general, or I forget the rank, comes up to him and basically says, we need you to sign a piece of paper saying that you guys did a chemical bomb against this village. Did the United States do this bomb? No. They're looking for somebody to blame it on. So of course the United States major sits there, standing up straight and tall. Serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 2. Name, rank, serial number. Keeps going. Eventually, he remembers, the general gets out of his seat, walks up to him, looks at him, draws his pistol, cool, calm, and collected, shoots him right in the face in front of these 4 men. Drops to the floor. He's bleeding out on the floor. Now you've got to keep in mind, my grandfather at this point in time is 19 years old, sitting there watching his leader just got shot in the face. Not much younger than me, not much older than you. They turn to the next guy, who's a lieutenant. Sir, name, rank, serial number. Goes through the whole serial number, goes through the whole name. They put him on a table. As he's laying on a table, they get out a bayonet and cut his stomach open. For those of you who don't know, you guys have intestines and organs. And they start to pull out the intestines and organs, and they're showing it. This guy, screaming on the table, eventually dies from bleeding out. After this happens, they have all the organs. They go to the next lieutenant. Now, my grandfather's next after this lieutenant. Next to him is his best friend named Apollo. As he's sitting there, they take Apollo. Apollo was a big dude for the times. He was like 6'4", big guy. And they put a gun in his hand, and they force him to go up to the general, to his lieutenant, and shoot the lieutenant. Now, as this happens, it's just my grandfather and Apollo. As he's sitting there thinking, God, I'm going to die. I can't tell him this information. I can't sign this document. I'm going to die today. As he's sitting there starts to be bombs dropped. He later found out the United States was bombing the prisoner of war camp he was at. Thank God, because I wouldn't be here if they didn't bomb that village. As this is happening, all these people obviously start to run to help put out things and hide for cover. And as this happens, they let them go. Now, in every flight suit, if you're flying, there's a silk map at the bottom of your flight suit, as well as 2 fire starters. So him and his buddy Apollo sit there, and they're talking, and they go, okay, we need to get out of here. So they pull all the wooden beds they have together, get out the fire starters in both of their pants, light it on fire, and a bunch of people start to try to escape. He said that was the last time he ever saw his buddy Apollo. He gets out, he doesn't know what happens, there's bullets flying at him, he escapes for 3 days. 3 days he's hiding in wherever he can in South Korea. Eventually he's recaptured, and they start torturing him, breaking his fingers. And I remember my grandfather, still his dying day, his fingers were all jacked up, going sideways, putting stuff under his fingernails. And he eventually is recaught, and does 39 days before American troops, United troops, push back until we get into that stalemate in the 1951 range. And he gets sent back to the United States. And luckily for him, when he entered the prisoner of war camp, he was about 158 pounds. When he left 39 days later, he had said he maybe ate whatever he could find on the floor, whatever he could dig up, not eating much of anything. Lost 27 pounds in 39 days. When you're already 150 pounds and you lose 27 pounds, he is like microscopically thin. Now that was his experience in the Korean War. Okay? That was the experience of being at the hands of the Chinese. Yes, sir. Question? Okay, now we see the firing of Douglas MacArthur. After he says we should drop nukes, President Truman says that's a bad idea. We shouldn't do that. Now, Douglas MacArthur goes to the media and says, hey, President Truman, he's soft. He is a communist sympathizer. So guess what President Truman does? He says, you can't do that. You're fired. You're insubordinate. Now, what does insubordinate mean?
You don't listen.
Disobedient. You don't do what you're told. So, eventually, Truman fires him. Now, not many people were happy about this. This man's a hero. He had a bunch of success in the Pacific during World War II. He rebuilt Japan. We'd had a lot of success to this point in Korea. So, after this happens, by 1952, UN troops had regained control of South Korea, and the war divulged into a stalemate around the 38th parallel. Now, Diego, what does a stalemate mean?
Both sides are not moving at all.
No movement, no sides really win, it's just kind of stuck. Yeah, it's just kind of a slow grind. So after we get into the stalemate goes on for about 2 years until 1953, UN and Chinese officials signed a ceasefire agreement and set the borders between Korea and the 38th parallel. Now, somebody tell me, what is a ceasefire? Temporary. Temporary enemy fighting. Okay, temporary. Temporary. Is that long term?
No.
No. Does that officially end it?
No.
No. Okay, temporary. So, if I temporarily end the war, and we never officially end the war really ever end?
No.
No. So most people don't know this. Still to this day, the United States still has American troops stationed at the DMZ. Now you think to yourself, what? Yeah, there's about 28,000 American troops still in Korea to this day, just in case North Korea decides to invade South Korea. We're ready to fight. So that's why it's important to understand ceasefire. Ceasefire did not mean the war ended. It means that it paused. North Korea could cross that DMZ. We're right back to war. After this happens, the war ends. After the war ends, we get the creation of the DMZ. It's about a new line. It's not exactly where the 38th parallel is. It's actually a little bit of a jagged line with a little bit of a curve in it. Now, a wise man with bow legs told me a funny story about what happened in 1980. Oh, why are you looking at him? Are you being mean? Are you discriminating against the bow-legged community? Come on. Okay? So, as he's telling me the story, 1980, there's a flash flood in North Korea. North Korea has a flash flood. All of a sudden, as this flash flood happens, a cow gets washed into the DMZ. A North Korean cow, ooh, communist cow, nasty. After this communist cow wiped in there, the United States and South Korea call up North Korea and say, hey, we're willing to get that cow out of there for you. Well, we'll bring in 4 American soldiers, we'll get a helicopter, we'll fly in, we'll strap it up, we'll get that thing out of there. It took 4 hours of negotiating with the North Koreans for us to be able to come up with a proper agreement of how we get the cow out of the DMZ. They eventually say, no, 4 soldiers. Ooh, no, too many, dangerous. You could have 2 soldiers. So eventually we fly in, we strap up this cow, we get him out of there. Now we bring this North Korean cow to South Korea. After we bring him to South Korea, North Korea calls up, hey, where's my cow? Why didn't you bring me back my cow? You know what South Korea does? They have a whole parade where they put the cow and they show off the cow. Yeah, look at our North Korean cow. Yes, we have their cow. We're so big, bad, and beautiful. Right, Luke? They showed off that cow proudly. Now, today, after the war, ensuing Kim ruler would build nuclear weapons and struggle with famine as a result of the poor planning and economic blockades. Okay? After the war ends, we officially get the ceasefire. We see North Korea remains communist. South Korea would go through a period of dictators until about the 1980s. In the 1980s, they would establish a democracy efficiently built on capitalism. Okay, right now, guys, pull out your Chromebooks. So pull out your Chromebooks. We're going to transition into doing a Kahoot assignment. Okay? We're going to review what we talked about today in class to see if you guys understand what we've done, if there's anything we need to reteach. So right now, let me pull up the Kahoot. Okay, so once you have your, whoa, who's watching YouTube videos? Okay, now that you guys have your Chromebooks out, use the code up on the screen to log into the Kahoot. Once everybody's in there, we will begin playing the game. Okay, right now you guys are going to be working with a partner, so make sure you have a partner. Okay. Okay, make sure everybody's in there. Who are we still waiting on? Okay, a couple more people. Okay. Buddha, this is when we start playing the game. I don't have to be in it. Walk around. We need to see the computer screens and what they're doing. Okay?
Yeah.
Who's Vander? Okay, are we ready to begin? Who are we waiting on? Okay, real quick. Okay, let's get. We have 2 Vander Flugs. Wow, this is unbelievable.
Who could that be?
Okay, who are we waiting on? What's the problem, boys? Yes. Oh, who's Mr. Blackney? He's going to win. He knows what he's talking about. Okay. Now, let's get started, okay? Kahoot's simple. You guys are going to have a question up there. I'll read that question to you guys. Make sure you click the right answer. This will be a way for us to see if we've understood what we've talked about today in class or not, okay? Let's get started. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. First question. The Crimean Peninsula was divided at the 38th parallel into 2 occupation zones controlled by what 2 countries? What 2 countries? China, India, Britain, Italy, the United States, the USSR, Turkey, and Germany. Okay. Very good. Okay. United States and the USSR. Very good. Okay. Oh, first, who's whoa. Go. Okay. Now, okay, please stop. Malachi, please stop. What was the American foreign policy called that the Americans used to have military action in Korea? Okay. Was it the Truman Doctrine, the Marshall Plan, the United Nations, or the Schlieffen Plan? Okay. What was the American foreign policy called?
I promise it's the Truman Show.
And what
The Truman Doctrine.
Oh, 32 perfect scores. Good job, class. The Truman Doctrine said we could use military action. Very good. We got a new leader. Okay. Why were the Soviets boycotting the United Nations? Because the United Nations gave China's seat to Turkey. The United Nations gave China's seat to Tibet. The United Nations gave China's seat to India. Or the United Nations gave their seat to Taiwan. I can't see either. Okay. Very good. Okay. The United Nations. The Soviet Union is boycotting because the UN gave their seat to Taiwan.
Still 31st.
Okay.
I'm 30.
Oh, we have a new leaderboard. Okay, question 4. What allowed the United Nations to provide support to South Korea? And this is the hardest question we have. Think. What allowed them to, not what they were trying to prevent. What allowed them to? Okay? What allowed them to?
I guess it is green.
Let's see what you got. Now, Flash. Okay, listen up carefully. Listen up carefully. The reason why we said allowed them to, the reason they were allowed to do it is because Russia wasn't present. They all wanted to stop the spread of communism, but what allowed them to, not what they were trying to do. Okay, the importance of the question. Okay, one American general launched a surprise attack by landing troops at the port of Incheon to begin a pincer maneuver. MacArthur, Patton, Washington, or the famous General Madrid? Hey.
It's green.
Very good, 32-0, very good. General MacArthur. Okay, now, what is the significance of the 38th parallel in world history? It was a dividing line between North and South Korea after World War II. It separated the United States and Canada. It marked the boundary between East and West Berlin after World War II, or it was the front line of World War I. Very good, okay? It separated North and South Korea. We have a new number one. Okay, how did China respond to the Korean War after the United Nations force approached the Yalu River? Okay, China declared neutrality and refused to get involved. China joined forces with South Korea against the North Koreans. China launched a massive military intervention to support North Korea. China signed a peace treaty with the United States. Very good. Okay. Last, remember, they launched an intervention into North Korea because they were afraid of the United States' presence in North Korea. How did General MacArthur want to fight against the Chinese? He wanted to use nuclear weapons, trench warfare, rock, paper, scissors, or sword fight. Oh! Who had rock, paper, scissors? Close, okay? He wanted to use nuclear weapons.
I don't know which one's with you.
What year did North and China sign a ceasefire agreement and set the border between the Koreas and the 38th parallel? 1953, 1950, 1955, or 1954? Okay, what year was the ceasefire signed? Oh, you're in a loser spot.
It's red. Click red. It's red.
I put red.
If it's red.
Oh, there we go. Hey, remember, class, 1950, the war starts. In 1 year, the United States has a lot of success. 1951, the Chinese counterattack. 2 years of stalemate. 1953, ceasefire signed.
I'm in 30th, bro.
Mr. Blackney's on a 3 right streak. Who's Mr. Blackney? Oh, yeah. True or false? Are American military troops still in Korea today?
False.
Oh, this could be a big one. Class, I have failed you. Who said false? Hey, class, remember. Hey, listen up. The reason we still have troops there is because we signed a ceasefire. Ceasefire is temporary. There's still a possibility of the North Koreans going and fighting the South Koreans, reactivating the war. So we have 28,000 troops still in Korea today. Okay, right now, transition to Google Classroom. Okay? Class, go to Google Classroom. There is a self-assessment survey that you guys are to complete. Okay, there is a self-assessment survey there to complete. On Google Classroom, there's a self-assessment survey for you to complete. Okay, Mr. Madrid, you can go ahead and stop the video. We have 5 minutes till the